Hi everyone, and welcome to the session. Thank you for announcing me. My name is Igor Pavleković, coming from Zagreb, Croatia, and I'm working as cloud solution architect for security and compliance. Today I'm going to speak to you about Microsoft security and Microsoft security products that we are actually having. The story about security and the world of the security has been shifting, especially in the last year. Since the pandemic, actually a lot of things changed. First of all, the conventional security tools have not kept the pace with things that were shifting and changing because of the context change where people started working. Second thing, attacks have been growing and they've become more sophisticated and more violent, I would say. And the third portion is that regulatory landscape is becoming more and more complex. We are seeing regional or local or organizational regulatory requirements for the organizations to shift, to strengthen the actually what organization needs to do in the terms of the IT services, but not just only IT services, but as well the organizational hierarchy and policies that we are employing. So what I'd like to say, last year, this time frame, actually the castles have collapsed. What have happened? Majority of the world has gone into lockdown. People started working from homes. A lot of IT services needed to change and adapt to that environments, especially, you know, when we think about the traditional organizations, they have built the castles and the trenches, and they've put big firewalls and security systems around actually the IT system, while basically the attacks were prevented from the outside. If you talk to the IT managers, the CIOs, CISOs, you're going to see that today they are not afraid of the external attacks. They are afraid of the internal attacks as well. Why is that? Because we are working from home. We are working from different locations. We are not using anymore the secured environment, but basically people are utilizing IT services from all over the places. You need to treat every aspect of the network as the internet, untrusted. And basically the way how we are thinking about security has changed. We are not protecting our IT environment on the network level, but we have strengthened the protection on the application layer, on the identity level, on the device level, because everything's became fluid. It's not anymore fixed into the environments that they were used to be. Because of that, Microsoft, and not just Microsoft, has started implementing and working with the customers on something that is called Zero Trust. Zero Trust is not the product. It's actually the mindset, the philosophy of the way how you treat the security in your environment. It's basically divided into three principles. First of all, is verify explicitly, meaning don't trust anything, verify on every action, every user, every identity, every device, every action, check if that entity is allowed to do it. Second thing, use least privilege access. So that's not something new, but a lot of companies still tend to kind of not to bother with, you know, fine graining what actually user or application is allowed to do, but they give them much more access than it should be. With Zero Trust, it's just least privilege access, the minimum level of permissions that people need to actually have to do something. And the last part is assume breach, meaning don't think that your environment is not attacked. It is. It's the question of the time when it's going to surface up, and it's time when you are going to see that somebody actually is in your environment. You know, the usual number that we like to say is that it takes more than 250 days since some attacker has been infiltrated in the IT environment, then until the security teams are going to detect it. So with zero trust, the way of thinking, we are dividing that into three logical pillars, actually. The first one is identities and devices. Remember, we don't care from which network the user of the service is coming or the device is coming. We don't care. We treat every aspect of the network as the internet, as the untrusted network. So with zero trust policy as the middle layer, you are going to evaluate that user, the requested resources that they are using, the activity of that user previously. By implementing artificial intelligence and machine learning, you are going to see if there are any deviations in the behavior of the user. If the user is trying to access some highly classified data that he never used that, or does the user tries to download huge number of files and he never used that before, that's going to raise the alert, and the machine learning and artificial intelligence based on your policies is going to kick in and respond to that kind of request. How they are going to respond, it can be different ways. They can completely remove the access for the user. They can block the user. They can wipe the device. They can enforce the user to utilize and to use multi-factor authentication. It really depends on your policy, on your settings, on your thinking of the organization. And the last logical part of the zero trust is data applications, infrastructure, and network, where all the controls rely. So actually, when you have all three bits and pieces, you can connect it into the perfect path that is going to verify explicitly every activity, use privileged access, and assume breach on every action. With Microsoft Security, we are protecting everything. We are simplifying the complex environments and IT systems, catching the things that others may miss, and growing that for the future. Microsoft is the provider that can offer end-to-end security. So we are offering security solutions in more than 40 categories. And not just that, we are not covering just Microsoft Cloud. So we are speaking about Microsoft 365 and Azure, but we are actually covering as well workloads that are running in AWS, Amazon, Google Cloud, and on the hybrid environments as well. So you can run things in your own data center on Azure Stack. The similar approach, the similar level or security solutions can be implemented there. So usually when we are speaking about industry trends and terminology, you are probably familiar with something like XDR, CM, CASB, CWPP, etc. Those all names map to the products on Microsoft side. You might not know them in that way, like that Azure Security Center is the cloud security posture management and cloud workload protection platform that is going to be there. So this slide shows you which industry trends and terminology are mapped to the products on the Microsoft side. And you are going to see that we are dividing basically Microsoft security products into two layers. The first one is the Defender family, which we usually speak about as the XDR solution. And on top of that, there is something that is called Azure Sentinel, which is the CM and SOAR solution for Microsoft. One thing that Microsoft doesn't offer from the security products is actually network detection and response. So for that functionality, you will need to use third-party partner solutions like Electra or any other there on the market. And that's really important because we are growing our ecosystem of the partners who are offering complementary programs to the platform of the security products that we are offering there. So if you think about Microsoft as a security provider, and we move back to year 2015-16, you would say Microsoft doesn't have anything to offer. There is something called Windows Defender that is antivirus on the machines, and that's it. But basically today, and those slides, those Gartner quadrants are actually from year 2019, so they are not the new ones. You are going to see that Microsoft is the leader in 5 quadrants. So in few years, we became from the niche player, from the provider that didn't have much to offer, to actually the leader in the security landscape for access management, CASB, endpoint protection platform, and so on. When we talk about Microsoft security technology, it's actually divided into 4 pillars. The first pillar is identity and access management. The second pillar is the threat protection. The third pillar is the information protection. And the last pillar is cloud security. And we are going to go a bit deeper into every and each of them. So in identity and access management, what we actually have is called Azure Active Directory. Our on-prem Active Directory was shifted to the cloud, offered as the identity as a service or platform as a service or software as a service, you name it, but it enables you to utilize identities for your own employees, for customers, for partners, to securely access your or third-party software as a service applications, cloud-hosted applications, or on-prem and web applications that you needed to publish to the internet to enable your, let's say, users utilize the applications from their home. Azure Active Directory is fully extensible. That means that it can synchronize with the on-prem environment, or it can be fully managed through the HR applications like SAP SuccessFactors, which are going to, let's say, provide the end-to-end lifecycle of the identity or user in your organization or company. Azure Active Directory provides seamless user experience with different types of the single sign-ons like text message, like voice calls, or utilizing soft tokens on the application. It provides something that is called self-service management for the users, where users themselves can change the data, request the change of data, can recover the password that they forgot or lost, that can access the portal of the applications that your organization has published and enable them. So at one place, they have all the information about it. And one thing that we are striving to is called passwordless authentication. It's the form of the strong authentication. It's not that we are trying to forget the passwords. I mean, that part is coming, but the question is that it's not going to come soon. With passwordless, we are trying to actually reduce the number of the passwords that the user is asked to enter or to remember. Basically, by implementing strong authentication methods like Windows Hello for Business, or utilizing hard tokens or different type of the hardware keys like FIDO2 compatible, we are reducing the usage of the passwords to enable our customers or users to utilize the services. Second pillar there is something that we call conditional access. It's the foundational term for the zero trust. It's basically machine learning based set of policies, rules, analysis about users' activity, devices activity, location of the user, monitoring that in the real time and deciding how to progress with the customer. It's going to pose you with risk detection and remediation portion, which is going to detect risky users or risky sign-ins, and based on your policy, you can define what is going to happen. So for instance, if we say that user is trying to access some financial report, so application that is, it can be, let's say, Excel, but the data that the user is trying to access is actually highly classified, and the user is trying to access that data from the untrusted device, from the unmanaged device, the user will be blocked to access that data. Or you can configure that their device needs to be remediated, that it needs to be Azure Active Directory joined, so you can manage it. Or you can enforce the wiping of data, or you can pose additional layer of the multi-factor authentication to that request, etc. So with conditional access, you are actually fine-tuning what the user will be able to utilize and how he can access that. The user don't need to use VPN, don't need to use secure network, because remember what I said, we treat every network as unsecure as internet, basically, even internal networks. And the last portion of the identity solution for Microsoft is the simplified identity governance. It's the whole identity lifecycle that is connected to the HR. It's actually privileged access that can implement things like limited time access to the data, role-based access control, and on top of that, there is a huge auditing engine that enables you to track what actually happened to enable or disable functionality to the user if they don't need to use it. Let's imagine creation of the distribution or security group. You can implement the lifecycle into it, in which the administrator or the owner of the group will need to renew it every 6 months to see if the group is still needed. On the threat protection side, so that's the next pillar of the security, we are speaking about security operations, and we are going to have two parts of it, basically. So as I said, on the bottom layer, there is XDR solution, so extended detection and response. The product that we are using or that we have is called Microsoft Defender, and it's divided into two spaces. The first one is the Microsoft 365 Defender, which is intended for end user environment. On the other side, we are speaking about Azure Defender, which is intended for the infrastructure. So we are speaking about servers, application, databases, Kubernetes clusters, IoT devices, etc. On top of that, you can think about it as the umbrella, as the bird-eye view. We have cloud-native SIEM and SOAR solution that is called Azure Sentinel. That solution is intended to collect all the logs, all the alerts, correlate them into the high-fidelity incidents all over your environment. So we are not just speaking about Microsoft environment, we are speaking about Cisco, we are speaking about Fortinet, we are speaking about multiple vendors and their solutions, and the SIEM Azure Sentinel that is going to correlate data from different sources and provide you with one single incident that you can track from end to end, and not just only that, that you can remediate automatically implementing SOAR functionalities. And one thing to say here, SOAR functionalities or automation is enabled through all the stack. So it's not just functionality of the Sentinel, you can automate and remediate automatically on the XDR level as well. You are going to see that in the demo. So when we are speaking about Microsoft 365 Defender, it basically protects the identities, the documents, endpoints, applications, etc. So Windows Defender, for instance, is the part of the Microsoft 365 Defender, but there is something that is called Defender for Endpoints, which is protecting all your endpoint devices. And we are speaking about Android, iOS, macOS, Linux, and Windows. So we are not just sticking to the Microsoft ecosystem, but we are actually utilizing the all operating system that there are currently in the world. One important thing to understand and to stress out, with Windows, those functionalities are built directly into the kernel of the operating system. So you don't need an agent to run on top of the operating system like with other vendors, but basically you just enable that functionality from the kernel of the operating system, meaning There is no additional burden on top of the kernel. Everything is being analyzed inside of the kernel of the operating system. That applies for Windows 10 and latest version of Windows Server 2019. And it's not only for the threats. You are going to see that, for instance, data leakage prevention has been integrated into that engine as well. So it runs natively on the operating system without any third-party integration there. On the Azure side, or infrastructure side, we are speaking about Azure Defender, which is there to protect the SQL storage environment, virtual machines, containers, network, industrial IoT. So it's the protection for the IoT. We recently acquired company CyberX, which was renamed and integrated into this product, Azure Defender and Azure App Services. Adrian was speaking about extending the hybrid environment with utilizing Azure Arc. The same principle applies here. So you can protect not only Azure native workloads, but basically workloads that are running in your data centers, as well as Amazon and Google Cloud workloads if the customer or you are using basically multi-cloud environment. When we are speaking about Sentinel, Sentinel was named the actually leader in the Forrester Wave for security and analytics platform in Q2 2020. The product that was recently released to the public. So we are speaking about really supreme product that now competes with long-term players in the CM environments like IBM QRadar or Splunk. So it's really easy. I'm going to show you a bit Sentinel afterwards, but basically it's really a great tool that enables you and quickly onboard you to the security functionality for CM system. So think about it. Usually we get questions like, how can I start using Sentinel? It's pretty easy. You can reach out and contact the partner that is actually providing that kind of services like UGT. And basically, you are just going to enable connectors and all of your data is going to start to flow into Azure Sentinel. And second question is how Azure Sentinel is charged to the customers. So it's kind of pretty easy. We are charging for the ingestion of data. So depending on how much data you want to put into Sentinel, you are being charged for that. We are not going to charge per incident, per alert, or anything else. After the data is in the Sentinel, you can do whatever you want with it. Data is going to stay there for free for 90 days. So if you put logs in the Sentinel, they can stay there free for 90 days. After 90 days, you are going to be billed. But there are multiple ways how you can actually archive in the short term or long term those functionalities into Sentinel or analytics workspace. When we are speaking about information protection, so third pillar of the security, we are speaking about protecting the information, the data. It can be structured or unstructured data, PDFs, files. It can be data that is actually stored not just in Microsoft clouds or on the on-prem, but in third-party software as a service application. The story is simple. You put the label on top of the data itself, so in the file or in the, let's say, the column in the database or the field in the database, and that actually label is going to protect data based on your rule. It means that depending on your rules, you can easily share the data with external recipients, but they won't be able to print it or copy it or whatever, or you can prevent it from, doing any kind of the leakage if we are speaking about high security data. So let's say, let's take care about this situation. You are having actually some sort of the CRM tool, and your seller is moving away from your company. Basically, what you want to prevent that seller to take all of your leads, all of your contacts, and move them to your to the new company, to store it on the USB stick or send it to the email. With utilizing information protection technology, you can do that. So data is protected not just only in at rest, but as well in use and in transit. And if you remember, I told you that DLP is actually being built into the kernel of the operating system itself, but not just there. The Edge and the Chrome supports it, and services like Box, Teams, Exchange, all over the place. The cloud security is the fourth pillar that we are speaking, and we are speaking about cloud security posture management and analysis of the environment. Why is that important? Because a lot of companies are using cloud services. So 3 years ago, I had really funny discussion with one customer in pharma industry, so pharmaceutical industry, and the IT was kind of saying to me, no, we are not using cloud, we cannot go to the cloud, the regulations are prohibiting that. And I was like, okay, can you tell me how you train your employees? Yeah, we are using, I don't know, we are using some software. Can you please check which one? And basically, the guys called human resources in front of me and asked, what software do you use for training of our employees? And they said, we are using GoToWebinar. And I said, and you said that you don't use any cloud, right? They were using cloud, but the IT wasn't aware of that. And that's something that we need to think about, that majority of the customers are using cloud for different type of the services. Maybe IT doesn't know it, and then it is really important to enforce the governance of that kind of applications, either in PaaS, SaaS, or IaaS, that organizations can use. If the IT fully knows what's happening in their environment, there is something that is called Azure Security Center. You can think about it, Baby Defender. It is going to give you actually a bird-eye view on the security score. It's not going to protect anything in terms of proactively. Remember that automation and threat protection. The Security Center is not going to do that. But Security Center is continuously going to evaluate your environment, look what you are using, and give you recommendations what to do to basically tighten your security posture. We are doing that with something that is called Security Score. Security Score is like gauge in which you can see, okay, the maximum amount of security points that I can achieve is, let's say, 60, and I'm currently at 30, so I'm at 50%. And you are going to get the list of the remediation steps that you can do to actually strengthen your security of your services. Again, we are not speaking just about Azure native workloads. We are speaking about AWS, Google Cloud, and the on-prem environments as well. The bigger brother of the Security Center is the Defender, which is going to proactively not just monitor, but prevent different type of the attacks on different workloads in your environment. So it's really going to be the XDR solution that we are speaking about. And for controlling the shadow IT, or the story about using the cloud applications that are not actually visible to the IT, or if they are visible to the IT, IT wants to know what users are doing with them. We have the product that is called Cloud App Security, Microsoft Cloud App Security, or MCAS, which is going to actually monitor your network traffic, your user activity, and tell you, hey, this user did this or that. They uploaded documents from their OneDrive or the SharePoint to the box. You can actually, even in some scenario or in some situation, cancel that move of the data. You can imply, for instance, the encryption of the data, so the data is going to get labeled so it cannot be used anymore, etc. We are supporting more than 17,000 applications, software as a service applications in the catalog, in which you can do easy thing like allow it or disallow it. That's the easiest thing. but you can create really deep and complex rules how you want to manage different type of the applications that are being used in your environment. And again, don't forget where the endpoint is. So it doesn't matter if the user is sitting at their home, on the airport, or on the beach, or in your company. This is going to apply wherever the user is. And that's the new security landscape that Microsoft can offer. And the last thing that I want to mention is the DevSecOps for our developers, utilizing GitHub as the not just only code repository and code management, but basically integrated platform that is going to provide the secure assessment of the applications that have been actually deployed in the environment. When I speak about all of this, I've chosen one slide that is called Native Security for Azure. It's super busy. A lot of information is going to be there. It's the part of the security reference architecture from Microsoft. You can try to find it or Google it from the Microsoft website. But what I wanted to show you is actually that we can cover end-to-end story. Either we are speaking just about the data, about emails, endpoints, or identities, or some really, I would say, complex environments in which you are employing multi-cloud hybrid scenarios, etc. The first step is here at the top, Cloud Adoption Framework and Azure well-architected framework, which are going to provide you with basically best practices and how to build your environment. But nevertheless, you can find here Zero Trust Controls, Azure Security Center, Microsoft 365 Defender, all of those things that I've been talking about and that actually Adrian mentioned. So without further ado, the goal of the Microsoft security is that we strive to make the world a safer place for all. So if you think about majority of those services that I've been describing, if we move back like few years back, if we are speaking about customer that has just 100 employees, that technology would not be accessible to them because that technology is super expensive when it's deployed in the on-prem environment. If that customer wants to achieve, let's say, machine learning based threat analytics. But with Microsoft Cloud Services, you can get those technologies for yourself for every type of the customer that there might exist. So either you are big or small, that security, enterprise grade security products are available to you. So without further ado, I would like to show you actually few functionalities from Azure Security Center, Azure Defender, and Azure Sentinel. So give me just 1 second. This is my Azure portal. And I'm having here multiple subscriptions. So it's the demo environment basically. And the first thing that I'm going to click is the Microsoft Security Center. If you remember, I said to you that Security Center offers you security scoring. You're going to find that in multiple Microsoft security products, some type of the scoring. So you can see that I have 19 Azure subscriptions, 2 AWS accounts, 2 GCP projects, so Google Cloud. And when I click on the actually security score, it's going to show me overall security posture of my organization. Let's say that this is the big enterprise with multiple teams. But nevertheless, I want to find out information about one specific, let's say, part of the organization or one customer. So I've opened that subscription, and I'm going to see that our security score is at 40%. So we have around 23 points out of 58. I can see here easily information about resource health, etc. But my question is, how can I actually make this secure score looks better? So what can I do to increase my security protection. So, for instance, I can achieve 17 points if I enable multi-factor authentication functionality. So you can see here all different type of the suggestions that you can do, like ensure multi-factor authentication is enabled for all IAM users that have console passwords. It's for AWS. If you look for which resource it goes, it's for AWS. But I'm going to open this one. So it says internet-facing virtual machines should be protected with network security groups. Okay. Management ports should be closed on your virtual machines. Okay. So we have 3 out of 21 virtual machines that don't have that. So what can I do? I can click on that. It's going to open not just the list of the resources for which I need to do that, but basically it's going to show me step-by-step remediation steps that are going to enable me do that actually. Even more, for some recommendations, if I'm not mistaken, this one, if I click on it, it's going to provide me actually the button to enable that. So not for everything, but I can, for instance, for this just-in-time access, I can click. I cannot click because this is the read-only environment, but I can select resources for which I want to achieve that and click on remediate. It's automatically going to enable just-in-time network access for that virtual machine. What does it mean? It means that if somebody wants to remotely connect to the virtual machine through the SSH or remote desktop protocol, they will need to file the request in the Azure portal to be able to connect to that. So we are not basically closing the firewall all over the time, but we are enabling that only user for the specific period of time with enough business justification can open the firewall for himself to be able to access that resource. And multiple similar approaches you are going to see in that secure dashboard. The other thing that I want to show in Security Center, if you fall under the regulatory compliance, so if your organization needs to implement different industry standards like PCI DSS, if you are FSI industry dealing with credit card data, or if you want to implement the ISO 27001, you can implement that actually industry standard requirement into the Azure. It's going to continuously monitor your environment, and it's going to say to you, hey, under this control, you have resources that don't have this implemented. So you need to enable audit usage of the custom RBAC rules to be able to be in compliance with this actually requirement A9.2.3 of the ISO 27001. You can see here, if you click on it, it's going to open the control details directly from the ISO, and this C means that that control is on customer side, that customer needs to implement, because the rest of them, some of them, are already being implemented by Microsoft as the service provider, because we need to, for instance, secure that the physical access to the data center is protected. That's on us, and you can find documentation about that here as well. So that was the Security Center. Let's go to the Azure Defender. If you remember, Defender is the XDR solution. So it's going to detect threats and it's going to prevent them. So basically, you see here the Defender coverage that we have, and remember we talked about servers, Kubernetes, container registries, app services, etc. And you can see here security alerts that happened on the monitored environment. So, and some advanced protection for the specific workloads, like VM vulnerability assessment is not enabled on 31 virtual machines. You can automate that, so every virtual machine is being deployed in Azure. It's automatically going to have an agent who is going to monitor for the vulnerability assessment. Or you can implement just-in-time access, etc. But what I wanted to show you is the security alert portion. So if you remember, I told you that security alerts in Defenders are going to be structured into high-fidelity incidents in Sentinel. So here we have the security alerting that are happening on the Defender side from the multiple, basically, resources that we have. Let's see this specific alert. It's about some Kubernetes service in which dashboard was detected. What you can see here is the Mitre tactics, which is really cool. It's going to go through the framework of the Mitre attack tactics. It's going to show that this is the persistence portion of the Mitre. And if we go to the full details, you are going to see much more information about it, actually, about the attack, on which resources it happened, what actually happened, what actions can you do actually to remediate that. And one cool thing with Defender is that you can automate actually that. So you can build your own logic apps. Adrian was talking about logic apps. So it's a low code, no code application that is automatically going to do something. It can be like sending an email to administrators or opening a ticket in the ticketing system. Important thing to understand that all of that, all the remediation actions and different queries that are being used in this environment is shared on the GitHub. So it's based on the open source, open to everyone. So that's really, really cool thing. So after the XDR, you can upgrade that to all the bird-eye view of your organization with Sentinel. So native, cloud native CM and SOAR solution. I'm going to open it. This Sentinel is in our demo SOC environment. So the first thing that you want to think about, how I'm going to bring data into Sentinel itself. So there are data connectors. Let's just let it load. Okay, so this is the starting page. I'm going to open data connectors. So you can bring in data from multiple sources to Sentinel. We are working with our partners to create a native connectors. Like if you are using, for instance, the Barracuda or Cisco or Fortinet or Citrix or whatever, probably the connector is already there. So you can utilize it to connect to your environment. Let's say Fortinet. This connector is built in, and you can actually define what kind of data is going to flow from the Fortinet appliances into Azure Sentinel. Remember, Sentinel is being priced on the ingested data. One thing to say here, Microsoft services, majority of them, like Microsoft 365 Defender, Cloud App Security, etc., is free of charge. So you are not paying for native Microsoft data that is already in the cloud, which is really cool, because if you are running your environment in Azure, and you want to integrate actually the security center, the data from Azure Defender into basically Sentinel, you can do that free of charge. So after the connection of data, the logs are going to flow in, and the Sentinel is going to do the rest. What does that mean? It's going to correlate activity between multiple sources. So let's say that you have had connection on your firewall, then email came to the user mailbox, the user clicked on the attachment, the malicious software started spreading, etc. You are going to see that in the Sentinel, because it enables you to correlate multiple sources, multiple events, alerts from different sources into high fidelity incidents. What does that mean? I don't need to go deeply into alerts, but I'm going to go into incidents where multiple alerts have been combined into single high fidelity incident for analysis to see what's happening actually from multiple sources. And that's the value of the Sentinel itself. So let's find, for instance, potential password spray. This is the one of the incident. If I open it, I'm going to see a bit more information in it, and I'm quickly running out of time. 2, 1, and the reminder should kick in. Yep, we are done. Give me just a few more seconds for me to show you actually what's happening here. So we have we see that there was actually potential password spray. I can see detailed information about what happened, who detected, which entities were used, which Mitre tactic was applied, etc. If I click on the investigate part, I can automatically deeply go and investigate what actually happened. It's going to open this kind of the view. Of course, this is pretty easy and simple incident, but where you have multiple sources, multiple activities, you are going to see that like really easily, and you can actually click on the entity and explore it further. With Azure Sentinel, you can automatically remediate things. Remember that information that I told you about automation part. And for the advanced hunting, using Custom Query Language or KQL is the imperative in which you are going to benefit from the Sentinel itself. If you were using already Custom Query Language in any other product from IBM, from different vendors, you are good to go to and test actually Sentinel itself. With that, I'm going to thank you, but if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 questions for me. So the first question is, can you tell me what security measures are implemented there in the Azure stack and how it can be integrated with Microsoft's other security services? So natively, all the Microsoft services, including Azure Stack, is built on top of the security foundations, meaning that it's automatically protected. But in addition to that, what I've said is that you extend security functionality, security products, even to the Azure Stack. So basically, if you want to run services on Azure Stack and want to apply Azure Defender, Azure Security Center, Defender for SQL or VMs or anything similar, you can extend it by utilizing Azure Arc on those services. The second question, if I'm using Office 365 services, will I still need to use other security services and how they can protect additionally? So Microsoft 365 or Office 365 actually has 2 layers of protection. The first layer is the native protection that is built into the service itself. So when we are speaking about email, email goes through the Exchange Online protection, which applies the certain layer of the protection against the, let's say, known malicious software or malicious links, etc. But some organizations need to implement higher level of the security services in Microsoft 365, like to implement protection against zero-day attacks in the emails. For that part, the users are going to use Office 365 or Microsoft 365 Defender, which is going to do the detonation of the attachments, the inspection of the by using machine learning and artificial intelligence to see what actually attachments do in the environments. For that kind of protection, you are going to need the higher level of protection of Microsoft 365. The similar is with identities. We are providing to all of our customers basic security of the identities, basic multi-factor authentication. But if you want to implement what I've described, let's say conditional access or risk assessment of the users and similar, you are going to need to use a bit higher level of the product itself. The similar approach is for the endpoint devices, whatever. And with that, I don't think that there are any further questions for me, right? Okay. With that, thank you so much for your time, and really pleased to have you here on this presentation and conference by UGT and Microsoft. Thank you.